the honor of being joined in the studio by lawmaker from the opposition leading Yesh Atid Party, Shelly Meron. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So many important things to discuss. I'll jump right into it. I mean, we're beginning an official recess for Parliament right now, a pretty lengthy one. There's a national crisis going on right now, though. What are the chances that we may see some action, some activity, maybe compromise talks during the recess? What's going to happen these next 2 months?
Well, that's the question of the day. Of course, everybody in Israel, I think, would like to reach some sort of an understanding because these are critical times in the state of Israel. We would like to go back to the negotiation table, but only if we do it by legislation for a year and a half. And that is because we've seen during the negotiations at the president's house for 3 or 4 months that we couldn't reach any agreements. Yeah. So we need to take time and do it, slowly and deeply and reach understandings and not do it quickly as we've seen in the latest Knesset session. So of course we would like to have understandings, but we have to see that the coalition truly wants to have agreements.
I mean, this 2025, Lapid said he wants to see it freeze till 2025, and it's, you're talking about give this time to really play out. Look, many had seen the opposition as walking away from those talks under President Herzog, or at least many sort of try to frame that the opposition was the reason those talks broke down. What could be done differently this time? You mentioned, less pressured talks, seeing that the right, has really staked their political careers on this position. They've really put themselves up in the trees, so to say, on this issue. How can talks maybe commence in a different way this time? What can be done?
Well, that's a good question. I think first and foremost, there is a trust issue right now between the coalition and the opposition. I think that the fact that the coalition did its own thing, right, on one-handed,
and did not. Yeah.
That's the legislation was very one-handed, and we didn't feel like there were real talks between us. I think if the votes would be secret, I think that the result might be different. But because the coalition and the government did the legislation one-handedly, then the opposition has a trust issue. That's why we need to sit down and talk without pressure and to discuss the deep issues that has been going on for the last few months. You see that the Israeli public is torn between both sides. And I go out every Saturday night with the demonstrations, and I consider myself a patriot, such as all the people that are participating in the demonstrations. These are excellent people, normal citizens who wants to have a democracy in our country. So I think this fight is truly an important one, and I call the demonstrators patriots and people who love Israel, who love democracy and want to maintain the democracy. So that's why I do it. And when I came to the Knesset 5 or 6 months ago, I had many things that I wanted to do. But right now, the main thing is keeping democracy. That's the main thing that we should focus on.
The coalition, they're saying they don't want any preconditions going into any future talks, especially I think this 2025 issue has been a problem from their perspective. Where does the two-way trust get built in terms of, will Lapid stand his ground on this must be a freeze till 2025? What can be done? What mini compromise can be reached just to get to the negotiating table?
I think that the 2025 issue is because we saw that the government and the coalition, they decided to legislate, even though there were negotiations. We tried up until the last minute to come to a compromise, and we couldn't do it. Once they decided to pass the legislation on their own, I think that broke the trust also. So if we don't legislate the year-and-a-half pause, then we simply don't think that it can be accomplished. So a year and a half is a reasonable time to discuss such important things for the future of the country of Israel. Basic laws are the base of democracy, and we should give it the right time. We shouldn't hurry. We shouldn't rush it just so we can,
Based on those lines, the basic laws, Prime Minister Netanyahu is making a big deal out of the fact that this is a basic law now, that the Supreme Court shouldn't really touch it, that this is something sacrosanct that shouldn't be, crossed by the Supreme Court. What do you expect to see in September when the judges do start deliberating? Might they strike this down? Will the government abide? What's the perspective?
First of all, I think that it's amazing to see that Prime Minister Netanyahu does interviews all over the world, and he would not say that he would abide by the Supreme Court. That's a very, very big issue. It's a red flag for the Israeli democracy. As an opposition member, I can tell you that we will abide by the Supreme Court. Any decision that the court will make, we will abide by it. Now, nobody knows what they will decide. There are 15 judges that are going to reside, and I trust the court completely to make the decision, and we will abide by it because this is a democracy and a state of law.
I want to make sure we get one more point in here. There's a lot of talk about Saudi peace right now, normalization with the Saudis, that would require perhaps a centrist government here to make real actions to make that deal possible. Look, Netanyahu has been totally blacklisted by all the opposition parties at this point. Might that position be softened if a real Saudi peace was hanging in the balance, despite some of the words from Yair Lapid lately that he wouldn't join a government? Could Saudi peace soften that stance on Netanyahu?
First of all, as we've proved before, opposition is not an opposition to the state of Israel. It's an opposition to the coalition, to the government. If there will be a good agreement for the national security of the state of Israel, of course we will support it. We don't need to join the government to support this agreement. We've done it before with the Abraham agreements. We will do it again if it's the good thing for the state of Israel. Of course, we have to see the agreement. We have to see what's in it, right, and then decide. But of course, we will always protect the national security of the state of Israel.
Shelly, Meron from Yesh Atid Party under